In this video, you'll learn whether you should sue your employer if you can, instead of proceeding with the work comp case if you get hurt at work. If this is your first time to my channel, my name's Domenic Celeste, the virtual accident attorney. I'm based in Palm Beach County, Florida, and I represent those injured on the job in workers' compensation and due to the fault of another in personal injury. This channel is all about answering your questions and giving you tips relating to Florida workers' compensation and personal injury law. Now before we get started, I have to show you this disclaimer, so just hold tight. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. So you have the opportunity to sue your employer for your work-related injury, but you're wondering whether you actually should versus just going on workers' compensation. Well, you've come to the right video. Hopefully, you've already watched my previous video going over whether you even can sue your employer for your work-related injury. If you haven't, I suggest watching that video first, which is in the card above. To determine whether you should sue your employer for your work-related injury or not, it's important to consider the differences as well as the benefits between the two choices. Firstly, let's go over the litigation differences. If you sue your employer for your work-related injury, you will not be doing so in work comp court. Rather, it'll be in circuit court, similar to where personal injury or other civil cases are heard, like car accident cases. This is important to know for a few reasons. First, you have to pay to file a lawsuit in a civil case, unlike in a work comp case where it's free to file a claim. So you have an additional cost there. And even though it's not a lot, it's still something to consider. Second, you will also be in front of a judge and jury in circuit court, whereas in work comp court, you're just in front of a judge. In circuit court, the jury are the fact finders who are just normal everyday people, and the judge rules on the law. In work comp court, the judge is both the fact finder and the rule of law. Now this is important to know because a jury is typically frustrated with having to spend their time to hear your case, so they're already somewhat against you. Also, a jury isn't trained in the law, so they'll tend to grasp onto facts or evidence that are important or interesting to them rather than to the law of the case. Whereas a work comp judge typically only uses those facts and evidence that are actually important to the law of the case. So consideration should be given to the strength of your case and to any factors that might turn a jury off from your case. The third thing, which is more important to people who don't have a lot of available time, is that a civil trial can last days to over a week in some instances, whereas a work comp final hearing typically only lasts a few hours. So for people with a full-time job or who live paycheck to paycheck, it's difficult to take a whole week off from work. Another consideration here is notice to your employer to take time off, as in a civil case, you're given a time span of when your trial may begin, but you usually don't find out until a couple weeks before trial begins, which may not be enough time to call off. The fourth thing that's important to consider is the cost of litigating a civil case versus a work comp case. In a civil case, you spend way more money in costs than a work comp case. Depending on the complexity of the case or the issues, you may spend a couple of $100 to a few thousand in a work comp case. Whereas in a civil case, you're spending at minimum thousands of dollars, sometimes into the ten or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The fifth thing is that there are a lot more procedural and evidentiary issues that come up in a civil trial than in a work comp trial, where the civil rules of procedure and evidentiary rules are somewhat relaxed. Because of the complexity of a civil trial, you typically need a lot of support staff and attorneys, which means even more money being spent. The sixth and last thing is in a civil case, attorney's fees start at 33 1/3% before filing a lawsuit and go to 40% after filing a lawsuit. Whereas in a work comp case, you're looking at attorney's fees of between 10 to 25%. Now, there is potential for a larger payout in a civil case versus a work comp case, but after all the fees and costs and everything else, it may not be worth it. Which brings me to the next section of this video, what you can get depending on your choice. So lastly, let's go compare the benefits of proceeding with the work comp case versus a personal injury case against your employer. The main benefit is that in a work comp case, if you qualify, the carrier pays for your medical care and a percentage of your lost wages, usually around 2/3 of your average weekly wage, while the case is ongoing. Whereas in a personal injury case, you are responsible for paying for your medical care and have to figure out how you're going to survive while you're out of work recovering from your injuries. And this can be difficult if you don't have health insurance or don't have any savings. There are ways, at least on the medical side, where doctors may be able to treat you under what's called a letter of protection, also known as an LOP, which is basically a promise to pay the doctor back out of whatever you get from the case. But if you lose the case, you may still be on the hook, which could put you in significant debt. There is a downside to proceeding with the work comp case in that the work comp carrier gets to pick your doctor and dictate your medical care, whereas in a personal injury case, you pick your doctors. And getting to pick your doctor is pretty important because medical care is really what drives these cases. And if you have a doctor that's on your side, then that makes for a better case. It's unfortunate, but that's business. Another benefit of having a work comp case versus a personal injury case is that they aren't as adversarial compared to a personal injury case. Now, in my experience having handled both work comp and personal injury cases, the attorneys get along a lot better in a work comp case than a personal injury case, which is beneficial in that you're not spending as much money litigating the issues because you have an easier time compromising and agreeing to things. Now, in a personal injury case, it's very rare that the attorneys get along. Once you file a lawsuit, you're in a constant battle over everything, which can become very costly. So what do I recommend to whether you should proceed with a work comp case versus a personal injury case against your employer? Well, as most of my answers go in these videos, it depends on a lot of things. Primarily, are the damages enough to warrant going after your employer in a personal injury case? Also, what is the method in which you're actually able to sue your employer? If it's because they didn't have work comp coverage, then I'd have a higher chance of saying yes to suing your employer. However, if it's because you claim that your employer did something intentional or hid something that caused your injury, I'd be less likely to say yes. I hope after watching this video, you learned a little more about whether you should sue your employer for your work-related injury if you can. So as you can see, Florida workers' compensation law can be really complex, but what can you do about it? Well, you can hire an attorney that's licensed to practice law in Florida and that handles workers' compensation cases, that represents real clients, goes to court, that knows what they're doing. And if you or someone you know were injured on the job or due to the fault of another, give me a call any time of the day or night. I have a 24/7, 365 receptionist, or you can go to my website to fill out an intake and schedule a free consultation. Or you know what? You can just text me, 561-935-3822. But that's it for this video. If you got value out of it or if you learned something, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me out. If you have a question, let me know in the comments below and I'll try and answer it. Like and follow me on all my socials to stay updated. And if you want to learn more about me, my firm, Florida work comp, or personal injury law, just go to my website, virtualaccidentattorney.com. Alright, so that's it for now. Again, my name's Domenic Celeste, the virtual accident attorney. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.